Okay, so while I'm waiting for the dough to rest for relax, I guess would be a better word, for 30 minutes before I do the first coil fold, it's time for me to fix my starter and replenish it. You know, I always use the same vessel for my starter and leaven, and that's because I end up baking a lot. And so when I build my leaven in the morning, I'm basically just building up my starter, and then so I'll overbuild it. Like today I needed 116 grams or something like that. I think I built it for 225, something like that. So I've got a lot left over. Again, if you keep a bowl of water handy, you'll be thankful. Keep this dough scraper, you'll be thankful. If you have a smooth-sided rubber spatula, you'll be very happy as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is see how much I've got left and figure out how much I want to keep. It's really smart to write the weight of your vessels on the bottom with a Sharpie. These WEC, I think they're half-liter jars, which are nice and smooth-sided. All right, they're very consistent, 386, 388, something like that. I usually just call it 385 when I'm measuring my starter, so it's easier to do the math. Like I said, you can be ultra precise, but you don't really have to be ridiculously precise. So this, let's see where we are here. 472.5, 472. I want to take this to probably just 20 grams. I'm going to feed it and then put it back in the refrigerator. So we had basically 15 to 400 and another 5, so I need to take it to 405. So I need to take a lot out. I'm going to save a bunch of it. I'm going to save the discard, as it's called, put it in a little vessel of its own. Bear with me for a second. And I use the discard, I don't know, not as much as I should, I guess, every couple weeks, and make sourdough pancakes, or I made crackers last week. They were okay, they weren't great. So I'm just gonna dump out everything until I get to 405 grams. 427. I could obviously, I'm gonna switch vessels as well. I've had this one going for a few weeks, and you know, no matter how well you clean it, it still gets dirty around the edge and gets crusty. So actually, let me just, okay. So I am going to just put the new jar on here. It's what I should have done to begin with, and put about 20 grams inside the new jar, and that's 405.5, definitely within spec. And I'm just going to clean this out as best I can, put it in this little discard tub. Here's where this dough scraper comes in really handy. That's wet, and get this scraped down nicely, but I'm not going to be too overly careful with it. This flour, you know, by the way, does get really expensive, or does get expensive if you like replenish it with 50 or 75 or even 100 grams each time you do it, you know, a few times a day or a few times a week. So you can actually just use like small little dabs, you know, 5 grams or whatever the minimum is, and then put 3 to 1 on top of that. What that means is, so if you've got 5 grams of your original starter, you put 15 grams of water and 15 grams of flour. So that's 1 to 3. Now you can do 1 to 4, 1 to 5. The higher the ratio that you do, the longer that starter is going to take to get ripe. The colder the ambient temperature is, the longer it's going to take to get ripe or mature. the colder the water is, the longer it's going to take to get ripe and mature. So you can work these things and work the timing out. The best thing to do is to stay consistent with your starter and have that's what I call a starter day. Like if I'm going to change the formula of the starter, have a starter day, and that would be feeding it 3 times, consistently with like 1 to 1 to 1 or 1 to 2, and seeing how long it takes to get to mature. For me, what I end up doing is I put my starter in the oven with the light on for 30 minutes if I'm going to use it that same day or want it to hurry up for some reason. And get to about 80 to 84 degrees. And then that takes about 3 hours to get to mature for a 1 to 1. And it takes about 5 hours for 1 to 2. 1 to 3 is 7-8 hours, something like that. And that's with warmish water in the oven. So it's about as fast as you can get that 1 to 1. Okay, so we have 20 grams in here. I'm going to do 60 grams of water, of cold water, pour that in. Pour slowly because the scale is behind. That's 50. You'll get to the point where you can kind of guess or get really close. So I'm at 60.5. I use maximum control. It's just a tablespoon to pour to put the flour in. I'm doing half rye and half central milling AP. This is artisanal AP. So I'll put 30 of rye in, 23, 30 of rye in. And then I'll put 30 of AP. And if you don't zero out your scale after I put this rye in, or your first flour, then if you go a little over or a little under, you can still see that you get to that total of 60 grams, which is what I'm shooting for, if you know what I mean. So I'm at 53 now, 55, that should be about 60, 58. 60. So I'm dead on, looks good. I'm gonna mix this up, as I said, with a smooth-sided spatula. And I've got some paper towels handy to clean the jar, because just like, drinking wine, right? If you see people drink wine, they'll hold it by the stem, the glass by the stem instead of the bulb of the glass. Then they're not necessarily doing it to be like snooty, but rather to keep their fingerprints off the glass. It's unattractive. So it's just, personal preference. You can be kind of a messy Marvin or Marvina if you want, or you can be like overly neat, or I like to think that I'm somewhere in between, kind of care about it. If these dang jars, they have to be clear, ideally, so you can see the how much your starter or leaven has risen. But it'd be nice if they weren't sometimes, you know what I mean? So what I'm gonna do now, I'm just dabbing this the spatula in the water, and just going straight down on the side, kind of knocking down the flour, and then I'll take a paper towel and clean it off. Like I said, the longer you wait, more trouble you're going to have cleaning anything with flour and water combined. So you have these periods between, during bulk, for whether you're doing stretch and fold or coil and folds, where you've got time to clean stuff up, and you're well advised to do that. If you're not a clean up as you go kind of person, you really ought to be, unless you've got somebody else cleaning up your stuff for you. Maybe a paper towel, I'm just gonna wet it. It's nice it's kind of like having a new kitchen sponge day. It's exciting when you get a new jar. It's nice and pristine and clean, and feel so good about it. See how I'm holding this jar over my cutting board and over the counter. That is a lesson learned rather, by scraping off that, because I waited too long actually scraping the sides with this spatula, and it just flipped out of my hand because it's a little slippery and broke on my concrete floor in a million different pieces all over the place. You see people put rubber bands on the level of their starter. This is just kind of you can do blue painter's tape if you don't have a rubber band. I use these for my wallet, so I always have them around. And the lid kind of on, not real tight, because you don't want it to blow up on you. And what I'll do now, before I put it in the refrigerator, I'll just let it sit out for an hour or so. Alexa, 1 hour starter timer, and then I'll put it in the refrigerator and pull it out, you know, a day or two before I need it. If I'm worried about my starter, which, you know, it's like a child, you know, you worry about your starter every now and then. If you're worried about it, then pull it out 2 days ahead of time, feed it, you know, twice a day, 3 times a day, just to watch it and see it, and make sure it's moving and maturing the way you want it to. And that's about it. We've got some time left before the coil unfolds, so I think I'm gonna get some water and get right back to you.